Hi, Mitchell Proner. I'm a personal injury attorney for over 30 years. I have had the honor and pleasure of lecturing to attorney groups across the country, in Canada and in Europe, on trial tactics, personal injury cases, representing consumers and victims of accidents, sustaining injuries. And now I have the pleasure of presenting information to the public at large through Facebook and our YouTube channel. If at any time during the program you have any questions you want to send in, feel free to do so. I'll do my best to answer the questions as I am filming this live on Facebook, and then afterwards we're posting it on YouTube and perhaps other mediums. I'm not sure. Anyway, so the subject for tonight is interstate collisions. And there are a lot of issues that arise in interstate collisions. Sometimes they involve interstate trucks and other vehicles. And I'm going to give you a story about a real case that actually went to trial and involved three parties. And it's almost like a law school question, but it's a real case. And I think it's an interesting case, and it might illustrate a lot of the issues that come up. So, in this real accident, what happened was this. I'm going to identify three parties to the collision. One is my client, who was a undocumented Haitian immigrant. And I'll tell you what he was doing at the time of the incident in a moment. The second one we'll call College Romeo. And the third one we're going to call Trucker. So here's what happens. My client is living with his family in Montreal, Canada. For some reason, he is a friend of his who is traveling back to Haiti, and he's flying out of Newark Airport. So my client offers to give his friend a ride to the airport, drops him off at Newark Airport, New Jersey. Then from Newark Airport, New Jersey, he was traveling on his way back to Montreal. He was traveling to Boston, where he intended to sell some videotapes. This was before DVDs, uh, that were French language videotapes, and he was going to sell them to the Haitian community there who wanted to see French movies. Anyway, while he's on his way back, he sees a vehicle in front of him crash, hitting a divider, spinning around, and facing traffic in the opposite direction with lights off. He goes out, pulls over his van to the shoulder, gets out of the van, rescues the driver of the car that I'm going to call College Romeo, and then goes back to the car, and he's hit by an interstate trucker. He died, unfortunately, not the trucker, but the Good Samaritan client. So we took testimony from the kid. And the reason I call him College Romeo is the story is this. He was a student at Southwestern Connecticut State College. And it was the first week of school. And his buddy just turned 21. And they went out for his 21st birthday, the buddy. And after drinking all night with the buddy, the college student calls up a girl that he dated over the summer And at 3 o'clock in the morning, he decides he's going to drive to Rhode Island. So that's why we call him College Romeo. So College Romeo, after going out for his buddy's 21st birthday at 3 o'clock, decides to drive to Rhode Island. On his way to Rhode Island, he falls asleep behind the wheel, crashes into the divider, and ends up in his car facing backwards in the passing lane with no lights on. That's when my client, the Good Samaritan, sees this, pulls over, and rescues College Romeo. Now, we don't know why he went back to the car. College Romeo said that the lights were off in the vehicle that was in the passing lane. Now, the driver of the truck, he says he was driving along 3 o'clock in the morning, didn't expect to see any vehicle, stopped in the roadway, and unfortunately blasted the car. Now, his truck, he swore, was going at 65 miles an hour, and it just so happened the truck had a governor installed where the truck couldn't go over 65 miles an hour, and that was the speed limit. So we know the trucker wasn't speeding, but maybe he did something else wrong. So it turned out that College Romeo had $1 million in insurance. The trucker had $2 million in insurance. We started out picking a jury. There was no offer before the case went to trial. They said my client had no reason to go back into the car. He knew nobody was in there because he pulled the kid out. It was all his fault. And my client couldn't testify as to why he went back to the car because, unfortunately, he passed away in the accident. I may have mentioned, after the accident, a passing vehicle in the other direction picked up part of the body. They found his leg in Rhode Island. Anyway, there was no offer before the case went to trial. The case went to trial in Connecticut, and it was an unusual trial. Juries in Connecticut are picked individually, which means typically in other venues, and I've tried cases in over 30 venues, in other venues, which is a lot for a lawyer. Most lawyers stick in one town. I've even I was lead counsel for the Costa Concordia shipwrecks. I've represented people from all over the world, but this case was in Connecticut. In Connecticut, it's unusual in that they have individual jury selection, which means the attorneys sit with the jurors one at a time. So what would happen was we'd start to pick one of the jurors and we'd start to talk to them, and I would tell them about the case from the plaintiff's version, and then the College Romeo's attorney, he would start to tell them about his version. And then the third attorney, the interstate trucker, would tell them. And by the time the third attorney spoke, they said, I can't be fair. I got a problem with interstate truckers. And then the next round, you reverse the order. And the interstate attorney would go first, his lawyer, and then College Romeo, and then I would go third. And they would say, I have a problem with undocumented immigrants. I can't be fair. And then the next round, College Romeo would go third. And by the time I got to College Romeo, they would say, I got a problem with drunk drivers. I can't be fair. And it didn't matter who went first and who went third. By the time the third attorney spoke, people wanted off, which is unusual. But there were a lot of issues in this case that were. So after 2 days of picking a jury with no judicial supervision, the judge supervising the case says, This is nonsense. You're taking too long. I'm going to send you to the judge to help supervise selection. So, with the judge assisting, it still took us 2 months to pick a jury, which I don't know any other attorneys that have gone through that experience. But it was just a particular case. It was unusual. After 2 months, we finally got a jury, and we tried the case for 2 weeks. And during the trial, one of the jurors, or I'm sorry, one of the jurors says, "I need an ambulance. My water just broke." And of course, they took her out, and one of the alternates moved in, and the judge said to us, "Why would you pick a jury that was so far along in a pregnancy?" And we said, during jury selection, she never said anything about being pregnant. We couldn't tell. She just looked like a big woman. And the judge said, "Yeah, I couldn't tell either." So things happen during a trial. Anyway, during the trial, College Romeo put up their $1 million, and there were no assets beyond that. So we got $1 million. Now the case at summation was just me against the truck driver. And of course, I was pointing the finger at them. And during cross-examination of the truck driver, uh, it turned out that the truck driver was over his hours, shouldn't have been driving, and shouldn't have been on the road. And the jury came back with 1.5 million against the truck driver. So the client got a multi-million dollar. It wasn't. It was his family in Canada, but he had a wife and a daughter. So at least they felt that they were taken care of. So issues that come up in interstate cases. Number one, where can you file suit? Well, there's an issue called diversity, that if the parties are from different states, you have the option of bringing the case in federal court rather than state court. Problem with federal court is a lot of federal judges don't allow jury selection like they do in state court. So typically, a plaintiff's attorney wants jury selection and will bring it in state court, but sometimes you might have a county that's not known for good verdicts, whereas in federal court you get a better jury pool. And because of that, I've often filed suit in federal court. So it depends, because the plaintiff gets to decide. The plaintiff is the one who's bringing the complaint. It's usually the injured, the person that was alleging damages. They're saying, "I have a complaint." And the defendants are the ones that say, "No, we're defending." The complaint is brought by the plaintiff. So me representing the plaintiffs, I get to choose where the case is brought. That's choice of forum. And with diversity, meaning they're from different states, you can bring it in federal court. But it has to be complete diversity. It can't be partial diversity. Second of all, in any case, you want to know how much coverage there is. You're always looking as a plaintiff for the deep pocket. And you might at times try and bring in a party because they're a deep pocket. That'll be easier to go after somebody else. But the easy party doesn't have the money to pay. Oftentimes, that's why products liability cases come in. Sometimes parties might be at fault, but the product should be safer, so that even if it's somebody's using it wrong, you can't get hurt. And that's why we have garage doors that automatically retract, because of products liability. Why was the kid running under there in the first place? Well, there should be some sort of sensor where the garage door automatically goes up. And we have that nowadays. Or why was the person walking behind the truck? They shouldn't have been. Well, that's why we have trucks that go beep, beep, beep when they back up, because of lawsuits. And so it's made the world safer, frankly. And that's why we don't have asbestos and birth control devices like the Dalcon Shield, because plaintiffs' lawyers brought accidents that made people safer. It doesn't mean you can't be responsible. I see a question here from Foster Studio. Can I still file a lawsuit in New York if the accident happened in another state but involved a New York resident? If the defendant, meaning the person that you're alleging did the wrong, is from New York, yes, you can sue them in New York. But let's suppose I'm an Alaska driver and I'm on Alaska roads. and all of a sudden I get into an accident. I hit a pedestrian who's from New York. Well, it's not fair to say now I'm driving in Alaska. I live in Alaska. The accident happened in Alaska. And now I'm have to defend the case in New York. But if an Alaska driver is driving in New York and they hit a pedestrian in New York and they go back to Alaska, you don't have to sue them in Alaska. You could sue them in New York. At the same rate, if a New York driver goes to Alaska and runs somebody over, that person in Alaska can sue that New Yorker in New York because it's not outrageous that you'll say to the New Yorker, we're going to sue you, but you could defend in your home state. So in your case, can I file a lawsuit in New York if the accident happened in another state but involved a New York resident? If you're suing the person and they live in New York, yes. Or if it's a corporation that's based in New York, yes. But if they have no ties to New York and the accident happened in New York, you can't sue them in New York. So there's also another issue called long arm jurisdiction. Long arm jurisdiction means if a corporation injects themselves into the stream of commerce in New York, you might be able to sue them in New York, depending on the circumstances. There's a famous case called International Shoe that established that principle of long arm jurisdiction. And it was good law when I went to law school in the 80s, and it's good law today. So we talked about where you could file suit, and we talked about insurance coverage and who you might want to sue. The other two issues that are important, of course, in every personal injury action are who's at fault and damages. Who's at fault? Well, sometimes a good lawyer can find fault where even the poor individual injured in the collision might not even know there's another party at fault. And a lawyer can find a culpable defendant if they're experienced. I've never heard of a guy that does like some real estate and some divorce and also does personal injury and criminal and handling complex personal injury actions. So if you're looking for somebody to find uh, 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 to represent you, you're probably better off having somebody that's dedicated their whole career just to one field of law, like I have, to representing accident victims and the injured individuals that sustained injuries because they believe they're the fault of someone else. But a lot of times I've found defendants that even my clients didn't know about. So fault can sometimes be established by a good attorney. That doesn't mean an attorney can establish fault where it doesn't exist. It means sometimes there is fault based upon the law that the client might not be familiar with. And the last item is damages. In a personal injury action, you're entitled to money for your personal injuries and the damages that arise from them. So that can be your loss of earnings from the time of the accident to the present, and from the present into the future that logically stem from the injury sustained. Loss of earnings. You're entitled to get money for your medical bills from the time of the accident to the present, and any medical bills you're likely to sustain in the future as a result of the injury sustained. And you're entitled to pain and suffering, including the loss of quality of life from the time of the accident to the present, and any loss of quality of life that may be established in the future due to the permanency of your injuries. If your injuries don't have permanency, you're not going to get future damages. And all those items can affect the value of your claim. And of course, experts can be hired by your attorney to establish the future damages. We oftentimes use economists, life care planners, vocational experts that establish future damages, which can amount into the millions depending on the injury sustained. So the most important thing is if you've had an injury and it's an interstate collision, hire a competent, experienced attorney. And to consult with my office at Proner and Proner is always free and confidential. And you can call us at 1-800-321-1234. I've got another question here. Doesn't matter which state the accident happened or where the drivers are from. Well, yes, you always want to know where it happened because the rules of the road may be different in different states and different laws apply. Where the people are from can also affect numerous issues like insurance coverage, where you can file suit, and whether or not there's any limitations on your ability to be compensated. For example, in Pennsylvania, your vehicle, you can select limited tort coverage, which might affect your ability to bring suit. In New York, we have a no-fault scheme where in order to bring suit for your injuries, for pain and suffering, you need to sustain a serious injury in the categories prescribed by law. Those categories include death, dismemberment, significant disfigurement, a fracture, a 90 out of 180-day complete impairment, and there's different categories. Whereas in Connecticut, no such significant serious injury limitations exist. So where the parties are from can have a whole array of problems that might affect your compensation and what you're entitled to. So I think that that's it for our program. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us at 1-800-321-1234, and you can speak with me directly or one of my staff, my team of attorneys and paralegals, investigators, and intake coordinators. And if I can, I'd love to help you out. Good luck to you, and I hope you're safe. Have a good night.
Happy Saturday, everybody. Hello. It's us from Proner and Proner. We're here at the 5-Borough Motorcyclist event as Steel Horses MC. This is an annual event. We're here to hand out some awesome merchandise for our fellow motorcyclists. We do handle all kinds of personal injury accidents. So aside from motorcyclists, I hope that none of you ever get into an accident. But if you ever, God forbid, if any of you do, then we are here to help. Or if you have any kind of accident, really, any slip, fall, a motor vehicle accident of any kind, then we'd be happy to help.